Next, I want to introduce the President and Executive Director of JFAN, Diane Rosenberg. Everyone on the JFAN board and many of you here tonight know that in addition to providing leadership for JFAN, no one works harder day after day or is more dedicated than Diane to protecting Jefferson County from the constant threat of CAFOs. She's also a part-time consultant to the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project, which allowed her to co-found and to coordinate the Iowa Alliance for Responsible Agriculture. Diane also has experience in writing, publication, event promotion, and community organizing. All of these things complement her work with JFAN. So please, let's welcome Diane Rosenberg.
Thank you, John. Before I start my talk tonight, I want to recognize two dedicated people that work hard and keep JFAN operating smoothly behind the scenes. They're my two assistants, Claire Tyler and Shalon Chu. JFAN could not accomplish all we do without their able support. I also want to recognize another person who definitely does not work behind the scenes. She does an enormous job fundraising for JFAN, which helps to make so much of what we do possible. And that's Susan Chapin. Finally, I'd like to express my appreciation to all the members of the JFAN board. I don't think I could ask for a better, more supportive, and dedicated group of people to work with. And I really want to thank all of you. Persistence. Persistence is the most powerful force on earth. It can move mountains. Albert Einstein said this, and it very much applies to our quest for a fair and just agricultural system. We need to move the monolithic mountain of Big Ag because, as many of you know, and as you'll understand even deeper tonight, as you hear from Dr. Lance Price and Lois DeVico, factory farms are a public health menace. They're a menace because they pollute our air with toxic gases like hydrogen sulfide and ammonia that may cause ailments like asthma, headaches, nausea, and depression for neighbors breathing in their toxic fumes. They're a public health menace because they often pollute our precious drinking water, something that common sense and decency would seem to indicate is a basic human right. They pose a public health threat to the approximately 250,000 of Iowans who rely on private wells for their drinking water. A recent report by the Environmental Working Group and the Iowa Environmental Council found that 40% of wells tested over an 18-year period in Iowa were contaminated with coliform bacteria at least once. That's bacteria that's present in feces, and it indicates other pathogens could be in the drinking water too. And if someone tells you that this is from septic systems, remind them that Iowa has about 3 million people and 25 million hogs who generate 4 billion gallons at least of raw hog sewage each year that's applied untreated to fields. That is not manure, that is sewage. Yes. Nitrate is another pollutant that threatens public health and is a byproduct of our unhealthy factory farm practices. A 2015 Des Moines Register report found 60 of Iowa's cities and towns battled with nitrates in their water supply during a 5-year period, and about 300 municipalities, about a third of Iowa's municipalities, were susceptible to nitrate contamination. That poses a threat for infants who risk contracting blue baby syndrome when nitrate levels reach 10 parts per million, which is the EPA limit. But we're also finding nitrate is implicated in several cancers at smaller amounts, as many as 12,000 cases annually, according to the Environmental Working Group's recent report. Then comes superbugs. one of the biggest health menaces of all, and which you'll be hearing about tonight. These are bacterial strains that are resistant to antibiotics, and they make it increasingly difficult to effectively treat an infection. And as Dr. Price will discuss tonight, resistant bacteria are coming out of factory farms. For many people, superbugs require several rounds of antibiotics to treat. In people with compromised immune systems, they can be fatal. Superbugs don't stay in CAFOs. They travel off the farm. They even found their way into my home when 2 of my family members contracted MRSA at 2 different times. One nearly wound up hospitalized before the infection was controlled, and I live in the center of town. The factory farm industry is a public health menace, and we're going to need a lot of persistence to move this formidable mountain. But I believe this can be done. Granted, it's not an overnight fix. It took us about 6 decades to get to where we are today, and I believe it will take time to rewind this mess of a system. But I also believe we will get there because there is evidence we are slowly moving this mountain. JFAN and Jefferson County residents demonstrate this on the local level by significantly holding down the number of CAFOs in Jefferson County because we persistently and with determination work at this all the time. As a result, we have a fraction of the number of CAFOs that you'll find in neighboring counties. This is especially evident in the number of new CAFOs that cropped up this year. We typically get a handful. This year, we only got 2. And I attribute that to the enormous outpouring of public opposition to 3 factory farms that were proposed in 2018. It's true we couldn't stop those CAFOs, but it certainly appears like we limited CAFO expansion this year. And it's not like the pork industry isn't going gangbusters across the state. We currently have a record 24.9 million hogs in Iowa, a 6% increase over last year. And I don't think it's a coincidence either that in 2018, we had a new supervisor voted into office. On the other hand, you never know what's coming down the road. We live in a state with an open for business sign for CAFOs, so we must always remain vigilant and persist in protecting Jefferson County. Let's look at how we're starting to move mountains on the state level. 2 groups, Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement and Food and Water Watch, brought a lawsuit against the state for its failure to protect the Raccoon River from factory farm pollution. Their demands include that the state clean up the filthy Raccoon River and enact a factory farm moratorium. Although the state challenged the lawsuit right away, a Polk district judge threw out the state's arguments and allowed the lawsuits to continue. That's really big. Now the state is challenging the lawsuit at the Iowa Supreme Court level. Big Ag's honchos aren't going to go down without a fight. But the 2 groups have a good case, so we're keeping a watchful and a hopeful eye on this. And the factory farm moratorium is growing in support. In 2018, we had 1 senator, Senator David Johnson, who's here tonight. We had 1 senator and 7 representatives followed suit co-sponsoring the bill. This year, in 2019, that support jumped to 5 senators and 20 representatives. This is progress. These bills will be reintroduced again in 2020, and with your help, we'll persistently work to add more co-sponsors and garner more support. Now I want to talk about how we're starting to move mountains on the national level. With so many undercover investigations exposing the horrific ways confined livestock may be treated, animal welfare is now a mainstream issue. And although the industry has hit back with ag-gag laws, court decisions have struck them down in several states, And I predict it will be a matter of time before they all go by the wayside because they infringe on our First Amendment protections, including this new ag law in Iowa. Public perception about livestock production is changing, and meat companies are taking notice, and so are legislators. 12 states to date have phased out extreme confinement apparatuses such as gestation crate and veal crates and battery cages, and several meat corporations are also following suit. Antibiotics are being phased out of some chicken corporations. These are steps in the right direction that developed over the last 10 years and are the result of consumer pressure. And what I think is the most significant of all is that we have not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 presidential candidates that have called for an outright ban on factory farms during this election cycle, and several others are calling for needed changes to federal agricultural policies. This is a huge and marked difference from 2016. It's a welcome start to mainstreaming this issue, and Iowa has had a hand in pushing this forward. We are making progress to move the big ag mountain, and with continued persistence and determination, we will eventually shove it aside for regenerative and responsible agricultural livestock practices to once again be the norm. The writer Sonia Johnson has said, "We must remember that one determined person can make a significant difference, and that a small group of determined people can change the course of history." And this is where we all come in. With determination and persistence over time, we can move the big ag mountain and change the course of factory farm history. We can move mountains by advocating for a factory farm moratorium and supporting it every step of the way. Urge your legislators and elected officials urge your elected officials and legislative candidates to co-sponsor the bill and hold them accountable if they don't. We do that when we turn out for the Stop Factory Farm Lobby Day on January 23rd this coming year in Des Moines, where we will work to push the moratorium bill to the next stage of enactment. Or by joining a volunteer group called Speak Up Now for a Clean Green Iowa, SUN, which is a volunteer group of citizens advocating for better CAFO laws. We make a difference when we discuss the threat of CAFOs to Fairfield with our 3 candidates for mayor and bring that issue to the forefront where it belongs. There are things they can do to protect the city, including using the 2-mile extraterritorial zone, and we need to urge them to do so. We make a difference when we take steps to close the LLC loophole that allows many CAFO owners, and many in Jefferson County, to skirt several regulations. There's a proposal currently on the table to fix that problem. You'll get some information when you leave tonight, and you could help to close this loophole with public comments and by attending a public hearing in Des Moines on October 29th. And we help to move mountains when we take advantage of presidential candidates coming to Iowa and publicly pressing them on their factory, farm, and agricultural positions. It's one of the most effective ways that we can right now eventually make this a mainstream issue. And finally, we all make a difference when we get out and vote. I can't overemphasize that enough. Vote for candidates that have the courage to stand up to big ag and who will support a CAFO moratorium and replace those that don't. It's that simple. We need to move mountains against this public health threat. With persistence and determination, we can. By pressing forward, we can work to achieve a fair and just agricultural system where farming practices will again work in harmony with nature, communities, and the environment. We can and we will eventually change the course of history if we persist and we persist and we persist. Thank you.